Good morning, everyone. This is Stephan Bodian, and I'm going to be teaching this course on spiritual awakening. I practiced, studied, and experienced spiritual awakening primarily in the Buddhist and Indian Advaita Vedanta traditions. I spent 10 years as a monk in the Buddhist tradition at several American Zen centers, studying with Japanese teachers, and subsequently studied with several Tibetan teachers in what is called the Dzogchen Mahamudra tradition of Tibetan Buddhism, and finally found the person I would consider my primary teacher, who was Jean Klein, who was a European gentleman who studied and then taught awakening from the non-dual perspective of the Advaita Vedanta tradition that came from India. So first I'm going to begin by talking a little about what I mean by awakening. Okay, because obviously the term awakening is a common English expression. It can mean many things, of course, and different spiritual traditions may speak of awakening in different ways. Right? Now, clearly, awakening is a metaphor, right? The metaphor of sleeping, perhaps dreaming, and then awakening from the dream, from sleep, into reality. Right? So this is what we mean by awakening. So the understanding beneath this approach to awakening is that our ordinary reality, the conventional view that we have of life and of ourselves, is a kind of sleep, is a kind of dream that we're inhabiting, and that the key to relieving our chronic unhappiness and dissatisfaction is to awaken out of the dream. See, ordinarily we try to become happy in the dream, right? We choose to achieve or acquire or get relationships, love, money, fame, fortune, right? And then we discover that these external supplies are not the key to our deep happiness, our deep sense of fulfillment and satisfaction. And at this point we may seek elsewhere. We may seek spirituality as perhaps an answer to this dissatisfaction. Now, of course, this understanding of dissatisfaction and an end to dissatisfaction is rooted in the Buddhist tradition, although I'm sure every tradition has its own version of this. These are the Four Noble Truths, the famous Four Noble Truths of the Buddha, right? Which is that life is marked, characterized by suffering. Not life is only suffering, which is somewhat often misinterpreted to mean. But life is inherently characterized by dissatisfaction, by suffering. And then there's an understanding that there is a cause of suffering. And the cause of suffering is not in externals. Okay? That's the usual diagnosis from the conventional point of view. But that the cause of suffering is in our attachment to having things be a certain way, essentially. And then there is a resolution of our suffering, our dissatisfaction, and that there is a path that we can follow to lead us to this freedom from suffering. Right? So the Buddha said, and the Dalai Lama is, or the Buddha purportedly said, since we don't really know what the Buddha said since it was only written down 500 years after his death, but we like to think, and I think it's safe to assume he said something like this, that happiness is wanting what you have and not wanting what you don't have. Unhappiness is wanting what you don't have and not wanting what you have, right? So happiness is, in essence, learning to be in alignment with reality, to not be attached to imposing our will, our agenda on life, right? Because the truth is that whenever we try to impose our agenda on life, we fail, actually, to a great